Hello everyone, this is Mladen Jovanovic talking from complementary-training.net, and in this installment I would like to go over some of the articles I wrote regarding planning the strength training, and a recent one I put on Elite FTS regarding the set and rep schemes, and just give you some random thoughts I've been having lately regarding something that I call horizontal and vertical variations in training. So as you can see on the screen, this is one of the articles I wrote. I think it was 2008 or 2009, and I kind of reiterated stuff written by Mark Ripto in Practical Programming book, which I found back then really useful book and very influential. So basically I reiterated some of his stuff, most of his stuff, and some of the ideas by Mike Tusher regarding the subjective changes in training programming based on subjective feedback, in this case set RPE. So I'll just quickly go through it. The main idea is that different levels of lifters demand different training approach, and that's quite intuitive, but it was quite groundbreaking, I guess, back then when the book was published for the first time, at least for me, because it kind of conceptualized everything and explained everything in such a detail. So I've been really influenced by some of those ideas, and I'm still using them. So over here I'm talking about some of the ideas of periodization in general, and some training in particular. One of my main ideas is that the way we classify things, I call it bucketing, or basically just classification or an error categorization, is affecting everything down the road. So how we use it, in most cases we just use couple of categories. It might be max strength, explosive strength, hypertrophy, and muscular endurance, and we keep using those categories, and the way we see those categories and the way we classify it, I will call this complex realities, is it's going to affect the way we're going to plan the training. And then you get into a discussion like, are we going to do a sequential model where we actually emphasize any given bucket and then we switch buckets, or we just we try to do everything at the same time using a complex approach or mixed approach? Again, depends. Everything starts with the way you classify things, and I don't think that's bad. It's just the way things work. We need categories actually to be functional. You cannot just think in shades of gray, but we need to appreciate that the things are actually in shades of gray, even if we use categories, which means that two categories can differ by some things, but if you look at one bucket itself, the stuff inside the bucket might differ between them, and stuff between two buckets might be similar as well. So it's like an overlap. It's not a fixed boundary. So it's like a Venn diagram where the buckets kind of overlap, and we need to take that into account. Talking about this level of periodization, some people like this way. I'm thinking that using a couple of zoom levels. I see it as a map, and you can trying to go from point A to point B, and I define a couple of zoom levels. The first one is just seeing a big picture, the competition calendar, and all the constraints we have on a system in terms of weather and facility availability, time availability, and so forth. Second zoom level is basically what I just said before, is that the way we organize our buckets. I'll just call it bucket. It sounds easier, or categories. Are we going to organize them in a sequential manner, or concurrent, or parallel, whatever you want it? And again, in this level, we define those categories and how we're gonna approach them. So now I think more about, you know, I understand that these categories are pretty much a result of something that's called latent variable modeling, and which is usually known as a factor analysis. So from multiple variables or multiple performance features, in this case might be a bench press 1RM, squat 1RM, long jump, vertical jump, you know, 40-meter sprint. We put all that for numerous athletes, and then we try to find those performances that correlate between them and doesn't correlate between other groups. That's basically a factor analysis, and then we are trying to kind of reduce reduce the complexity to less amount of information. And then we figure out this, okay, there's a strength, there's a speed, and there's a power, and there's endurance. And, you know, we start to use those, but if you dig more into a factor analysis and the way we figure out those buckets, you can see there's again, the error term. So things are not, you know, not really perfect. So there's an overlap between the factors, even if you use something that's called a factor rotation. Now I'm talking a little bit more statistics, but I think it's important to understand how things emerge and how we use it. Anyway, once we define those buckets and we define the kind of the way we're gonna use them, how we're gonna approach them, we go to a third level zoom, and that basically goes into how we're gonna do it in real life, how we're gonna approach the development of each bucket. As it is now, I think more about the buckets exist, right? But I think more about something I call like a fractal point of view. So the higher the level of the individual, the more deeper you need to go inside the bucket. And inside the bucket, you might see smaller buckets. For example, this sounds more metaphysical, but in a practical example, we might have a powerlifter, elite powerlifter, and we might have a general a sport athlete that needs to improve his squat with the goal of training transfer to reducing injuries or improving his vertical jump or improving his starting acceleration. And on the other side, we might have a powerlifter. So the way you approach strength training, in this case for a squat, is going to be very, very difficult, because for a powerlifter you need to go in much more details, and I call that a fractal dimension. So you just need to adjust all the other things like stance, bar position, breathing, all those small details that you basically don't need to bother with a team sport athlete. They just need to, they are generalists, these guys are specialists, so you need to figure out all those small buckets. And the way I see it now, we need to find the limiters of performance. So we are trying to find that particular, let's call it a bucket or a fractal dimensional bucket, that tweaking that or improving that is going to improve the performance. And again, that differs between the levels of the athlete and his specialization or generalization, if he's a specialist or generalist. So just going through the article, couple of way to organize development. Most specifically, we have a parallel and serial development. So I'll just skim through this stuff and go to there's some stuff on autoregulatory training, and now we deal with different aspects of different levels of the lifters according to Mark Crypto and Practical Programming book. And we have a novice lifter, and I see it as everything goes, whatever you do, improve most of the buckets. Then you have intermediate guy who needs a little bit more variation, more complexity. So to improve different buckets, you need to actually perform training for them. And which brings me to another interesting topic, is that we have this mental model that, for example, if if you have different buckets, let's say VO2 max, training economy, I'm talking about endurance sports, and aerobic capacity, and we associate certain training methods with those capacities. So if you want to improve your VO2 max, you do VO2 max intervals. If you want to do your training economy, you do, whatever training economy runs, and that could be strides, higher intensity repetitions and stuff like that. If you want to improve your aerobic capacity, you do tempo runs. Tempo, a term from endurance training, not from Charlie Francis. So tempo is something that's more higher to a threshold pace, and so forth. But then we have, for example, in powerlifting, if you want to improve your 1RM, your maximum strength, you do maximum strength training. But then on the flip side, you have approaches such as Boris Sheiko approach, where you actually do high volume of specialized exercises or competition exercises, usually under 85%, and they still improve. So again, we need to see how we formulate our mental models of training and what works, because we're gonna basically hit the wall, and we can explain certain systems with the models we have. So we need to look at the models as they are definitely wrong, but let's use them as long as they're useful. So rephrasing the famous statistician Box quote. When it comes to advanced athletes, you cannot continue to develop each bucket. You need to make priorities, and then different types of periodization might occur. So you cannot develop all the things at the same time. You need to focus on a certain quality, and you need to kind of saturate that quality before moving to other things, at least according to this model. And then you rotate the emphasis. So it's a basis of conjugate sequence system, or whatever you want to call it, or the block system, and the system that use this more sequential approach to training development. Anyway, this is I think quite useful article. I still like to review it sometimes, and it's written 2009 or 2008, can't remember exactly. One of the recent ones I wrote was set and rep schemes in strength training. It's published on my blog and also on Elite FTS. Basically pretty similar to that old article, the way we approach training organization. I spent some time discussing the what I refer to as a training intensity, and understanding set and rep schemes, or in this case load exertion relationship, and describing what I like to call a traditional approach or percent-based approach to training. This picture basically depicts the training process, where we start with the needs analysis. Again, we define very similar to, if not the same as, 3 different Zoom levels. We start with the analysis of the competition needs and characteristics of the athlete. In this process, we also define the buckets, or we try to identify the training limiters, what this guy needs to do to improve. So we basically want to remove the limiter, which again, having those defines the training objectives, trying to answer what needs to be done, what should be done, and how is that going to be evaluated and measured, which yields to training parameters, and how much we're going to train, the volume and intensity and everything that follows. And again, we have progressions, variations. Talking about the progressions and variations, we also have this idea that once we define the objectives, what needs to be done. We have these progressions we put in place. So we assume the progression will happen, and we create a couple of again different common progressions and variations in training programming, in training loads, but doesn't work. And it doesn't work because we are complex biological system, and the way we think the progression is going to work might not work all the time. So we might expect different complex variations in training effects. So this needs to go around, and we need to reevaluate this all the time, basically. And SNC's coaches, me included, are notorious for using different training progressions, and I'm gonna go over some of them. But again, we need to create more flexible approaches that allows for different variations in reactions of each particular athlete. In stating this differently, we need to not plan the progressions, but we need to allow the progressions to happen, which is a little bit change in our paradigm. Here I was talking about a couple of workout set and rep schemes. Again, we have a lot of different options, plateau load, step load, and pyramids and all that stuff. This is quite interesting. Also, I have a mental or emotional attachment to some of them, and probably you guys do as well. And for example, I figure out that if I do a plateau load, that's 5 sets or whatever number of sets across, using same number of reps, same intensity for a number of sets, I really struggle with that, for example, especially on the lower body. And I like to alternate things a little bit, just because it's mentally easier to plug in some work. That's why I prefer either step load or waves and stuff like that, just to be kind of changing things a little bit inside the training prescription. The different level is the weekly set and rep schemes. This is basically the difference between day 1 and day 2, and this comes back to hard, medium, easy approaches. I think Lyle McDonald recently wrote a really good piece on those aspects of training, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more later about it. I call this horizontal alternation. You'll quickly see why is it horizontal. Training block set and rep schemes is the way we progress across the training block, and this is again our commonly defined the progression. How are we gonna increase the number of sets? Are we gonna increase the number of reps? Are we gonna increase the intensity and so forth? So we have, again, plenty of options here. Again, it's pretty hard to say which one should we use and which one works, which one doesn't. And to be honest, I don't know. I have no clue. We have this emotional attachment to some of the forms. Some might seem very useful for certain goals. Some of them are not so useful for other goals. But again, we need to adjust based on the both biological reaction of the training and his I would say psychological preferences, which I'm gonna cover a little bit later. So, and I call this vertical alternation. You'll see quickly again why I call it vertical. So that's pretty much it regarding this article, and I wanted to switch back to Greg Nuckols, and this is quite amazing article in defense of program hoppers, and he's basically describing the thing I'm gonna cover now. So one of the things is comparing is a non-periodized training group to daily undulating group, which involves changing number of reps and set schemes horizontally, in this case across the week, and it's being shown to yield more benefits than just non-periodized approach. And in my opinion, and according to Greg, and which I pretty much found very groundbreaking, is this difference might be because of the psychological reaction. And I highly urge you to read this paper, to read this blog entry. So I'm going to switch to kind of try to explain the difference between horizontal and vertical alternations. In this case, we have a 4-week cycle for a beginner or a novice training program. This is a starting strength program. And the novice is doing 3 sets of 5. So he's doing 3 sets of 5 across the week. I call that horizontal alternations. So there's no horizontal alternations. And he's doing 3 sets of 5 vertically. I call that again vertical variations. And this is quite famous program. Yields a huge benefits, but I don't know. Some people might not find it doable because of the psychological reasons. For example, you do in this case you do squats 3 times a week, and you finish this workout, and the next workout you need to again do 3 sets of 5. Then again 3 sets of 5, and Mark used something that's called micro-loading. It's not micro-loading, but he's using small increments in weight. But sometimes when you hit a hard set, these sets are not really hard. Basically, they are starting maybe at 80%, even less, 60%, and then you're slowly building up. Because this is a novice program, you might not even know the percentages of 1RM. So again, it's slowly building up. Again, once you hit once you hit a heavy set, then you're gonna hit it again and again, and you need to increase the weight. So there's an emotional attachment, there's an emotional reaction to a training, and basically you come with a certain anxiety to training because you need to hit certain weights. This is a novice program. For intermediate program, Mark introduced famous Texas method, where hard, easy, medium, or medium, easy, hard, where we have some alternations across the week, changing number of sets and changing the weight being used. So this is a volume workout. We have a slightly easier intensity, weight on the bar, higher number of sets, so we are accumulating volume. This one is an easy workout, and then we have usually 5 sets step up, or increasing across 5 sets until you hit a heavy set of 5. Basically, you emphasize intensity here and intensiveness, and try to reduce the volume. Again, there's a horizontal alternations, but there's no vertical. So vertically, the training programs are similar. Again, this is slightly more useful, at least from a psychological standpoint, and you have some variations in training. When it comes to, did I miss something here? Yeah, this is a more advanced program by Ripto, quite similar to the above ones, but now we can see we have both horizontal alternations. So this is volume, easy volume, quite similar to the above intermediate program. This is advanced. Need to quickly change this. And we have vertical alternations. In this case, we have this training block, which is volume dominated. We have 5 sets of 5, and this training block is trying to decrease the volume, basically super compensate from this training block, and we're going to use less number of reps, less number of sets to actually again super compensate and taper, so we can increase in the performance in 1RM. One of the ideas here, one of the ideas again here is, as you can see, we have once a week or let's say in a novice program, you might hit heavy sets 3 times a week basically, or just approaching your personal best or breaking your personal best 3 times a week until you hit plateau, and then you're going to recycle, right? So this is a novice program. With intermediate program, that happens only once a week. So you're basically saving yourself, in quotation mark, for a heavy Friday workout. In this case, you're saving yourself for a full month until you start hitting the heavy sets. And again, this might comes back to this differences in lifters, lifter categories. Because as a novice, you don't know what you can do. As an intermediate, you can hit it once a week, and as an advanced, you can hit it every now and then. And I think this has a biological biological backup, but I also have it has a psychological backup, because if you need to ramp up your if you need to psych up quite often as an advanced, you're gonna just burn out, and it's really hard to do it. I'm gonna cover some of the similar approaches to Greg Nuckols when it comes to different, in this case, novice and intermediate training. And similar to Ripto program, Greg Nuckols uses, I would call this daily undulating periodization. So basically alternate between sets of 8, 6 of 6, and 6 sets of 4. And one set is as much reps as possible. I will probably say that this is as much technical reps as possible. And there is some variation across horizontally, and there is no alternations vertically. Again, for some people, this might be much more doable than just following starting strength program, because you finish a workout with sets of 8, then you're actually looking forward to sets of 6, because okay, let's see what's gonna happen differently. And same thing for sets of 4. And as compared to just doing 3 sets of 5 across the week, you pretty much you know how much you're gonna lift, and you have this, again, in my opinion, anxiety before arriving to training, actually, and because you need to hit certain numbers. While in this case, you might just let it go and see how it goes, and you're actually looking forward to a workout. So again, it's I think we disregard this psychological aspect of training programming, and I'll come back to Greg's statement at the end of this great article. It's just basically we need to find something that meshes with your unique psychology and your physiology. So some training program that actually gives you a biological benefits, but you're actually looking forward to doing psychologically. And just providing alterations or variations might have nothing to do with biology and might have everything to do with psychology. So, and because it's psychological, you're probably going to push more, you're going to look forward to it, and you're probably going to stick to it more often. And then you gain the benefits because of your attendance and your following of the training program. Again, this is a Greg Nuckols novice program. This is intermediate. Again, these as much reps as possible sets are being moved only once a week, similar to intermediate program by Ripto. But he also provides some variations in training program across the days. So this could be more volume dominated. Again, haven't dig too much into these to calculate the volumes, but it seems that this one, both are both have a large number of sets, in this case around 6 or more, but there's a slight variation in intensity. So I don't know if this is anything special from a biological standpoint, but psychologically you look forward doing something differently. Again, going back to other sports, since I believe we can learn from different fields let's say in endurance sports or 400 meters, you can probably get the same biological benefit by repeating 400-meter sprints, but psychologically you get attached to a certain distance, and you might flip out if the performance is not that well. And this is similar to performing sets of 5 across the week, because you are coming to a workout with this let's call it anxiety, but you're coming with this pre-planned result in your head, because last time you did it, you did 5 sets of 5 with 100 kilos. Now you need to do 5 sets of 5 with 102 kilos or whatever. So some of the track and field coaches actually prescribe over and under distances, not because it's biologically different, but because you don't get this emotional reaction. So you can actually relax and train instead of just figuring out, oh, I'm under training, I'm overtraining, I'm not improving, I'm under improving, or whatever, or just avoiding this feeling of hitting a plateau. So you basically work around it or hide it using slightly different in a distance world, slightly over and under distances, and you're pretty much hitting the similar stimuli. Again, is there a big difference between sets of 8 and sets of 6? Pretty much not, but psychologically there is, or there might be. And then, just to wrap this up, this was basically a random chat about some of the thought process I'm having about the training programs and the importance of juggling with the psychological parts of training, not only trying to say that everything we do it has a biological background, or is giving a biological stimuli. It might be done solely because of the psychological things. And good coaches use basically tricking and lying athletes to a good performance, and just giving a wrong feedback, over prescribing training and then reducing the training, and just the athletes get the sense of being in control, and this kind of comes back to that as well. As Greg said, just try to find something that gives you a biological stimuli, but it also doable from psychology, and you look forward to it. And these variations in training might provide that, and again, we need a balance. We need to balance things that are stable. We need a stable program. In this case, as you can see, the program is stable across the weeks, but it provides some variations across the week, within a week, and that might be enough. So we have stable. We are not just jumping bandwagons and doing a shotgun approach. We have planned training. We provide training variations, and we might allow the training progressions to happen instead of planning it. And this might be a topic for another talk, in terms of how that might be useful, how that might be implemented in training. There's one more thing I wanted to say, but can't remember it, to be honest. So I'll need to, I'll wrap up and say thanks for listening this mental puking, I will say, random thoughts about it, and hopefully you get some of the ideas. One thing I wanted to cover as well is that we can provide variation in different things. So this could be changes in training parameters, or we can actually change the exercise. Again, depends on the athlete, depends on if he's a specialist or he's a generalist. In this case, if he's a specialist, he needs to perform very similar exercises to his competition movements. while the generalist might actually benefit from variations in training movements and look forward to different exercises while hitting the same movement patterns. So this might be a squat, this might be a front squat, this might be a trap bar squat, something like that. So again, those are horizontal alternations. Vertical alternations are is something that we usually call a training progression. So again, this wraps up this Random Thoughts podcast. Thanks for listening.